Halflings. The second smallest and last of the standard races that I will be covering in this series. And right here, we have our nice description of the Halfling for 5th edition. Let us get into this. First, ability score increase. Dexterity score increases by 2. Age. Halflings reach adulthood at the age of 20 and generally live into the middle of his or her 2nd century. So say middle, that's around 150 years. Alignment are usually lawful good. Okay. Size. Average about 3 feet tall, weigh 40 pounds. This makes them small, and they have a speed of 25 feet. Here's the fun parts. Lucky. When you roll a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll the die and must use the new result. Not too bad. I will point out that attacks, abilities, checks, and saving throws are like 98% of every roll in the game. The only roll that I can think of that doesn't apply here would be the damage rolls. Everything else in 5th edition is either an attack, an ability check, or a saving throw. That's why even when they're listing skill proficiencies, it's always you have proficiency in, say, charisma, intimidation. Because it is still a charisma check. It is not a skill check. It is a ability check for a specific purpose. So, all of them, almost everything other than damage, is affected by this lucky ability. That's very nice. Because especially with attacks, a 1 is always considered a failure. If you roll a 1 on your attack, you missed. But for a halfling, they roll a 1, they get to re-roll it. So the idea of them getting an automatic failure is almost non-existent because of this. This lucky thing is very powerful. Now we have Brave. Advantage on saving throws against being frightened. Okay. Pretty simple. We're good. Halfling Nimbleness. You can move through the space of any creature that is of a size larger than yours. So right now you're considered small. Halflings are small, so anything that is medium or larger, a halfling can move through their occupied space. Now, just to clarify a few things, like a medium creature occupies, in general, what is considered a 5-foot square, 5 feet by 5 feet. That's actually a pretty good-sized area. I think my arm span is about 5 feet. To move within somebody else's space, that's actually kind of difficult. People moving around, they're swinging their sword, their weapons around. I'm not a fencer, so my arms are just kind of flailing. But you get my point. If I'm going to swing a sword, that sword blade is going to be going arcing. I'm going to and I'm not going to swing like this. I'm going to arch back, bring in my whole body to get a good swing in there. That whole 5-foot space can be taken up, especially if I'm doing more than one attack. So this idea that the halfling nimbleness can move through the space of larger creatures. And it doesn't say that they have to be friendly, because I'm pretty sure that is standard. You can move through your allies' spaces, because your allies will move out of the way. But an enemy, if I'm trying to get past the orc, and I'm just running right next to him, he's going to take his sword and whack me right as I go past. I'm not going to be able to... That's why it's a 5-foot space. Because this is what I can easily reach, regardless of what my movements are. I can get you within that space. The halfling can just waltz right through. Now, just like our elf, dwarf, and gnome, halflings get sub-races. And the first of our sub-races right here, we have the Lightfoot. And the Lightfoot gets 2 abilities. Each of these sub-races will get 2 abilities. So the first, we get the ability score increase. Charisma score goes up 1. So our total of a +3, 2 to dexterity, 1 to charisma. Then we get this naturally stealthy. You can attempt to hide even when you are obscured only by another creature that is at least 1 size larger than you. So a halfling can stand behind a human and then attempt to hide. So most of the time, that's not enough concealment to make an attempt to hide. But halfling, the Lightfoot halfling, he can do this. He can use other creatures as a means to hide. Now we get the Stout. The Stout halfling here has an ability score increase of a +1 to his Constitution. Because he's stout. The Lightfoot is the small, nimble guy. The Stout is the halfling that is broader, more hardy. So they get a +1 to Constitution. They also have this Stout resilience. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage. This is exactly the same thing as the dwarven resistance. So the stout halfling gets the same benefit that dwarves get. This is what halflings get. There's two abilities from their sub-races. A second ability score increase, and then either stealthy or resilient, and then they have the lucky and halfling nimbleness. They are the small, light-footed, quick race. Now, looking at 3rd edition, let's see how similar we have it. We have first, they get a +2 to dexterity, just like they do in 5th. But they're -2 to strength, just like a gnome because of their size. They're small, so they have a lower strength. Okay, they are small. And so they get all the benefits of being small, just like a gnome got. +1 attack, +1 armor class, and +4 to hiding. They have a speed of 20, which would be standard for a small character in 3rd edition. Then they get a +2 bonus on climb, jump, and move silently. They also have a +1 racial bonus on saving throws. And this is all saving throws. And this is kind of the translation of lucky over here. This bonus to all saving throws is what lucky is. Lucky is actually a little... It's kind of hard to judge the power, because this is... Lucky only benefits you if you roll a 1, which means getting an automatic failure is very hard. Just a straight bonus means that you will be able to resist more things, but you still have the risk of an automatic failure or fumble. So I'm not sure how to compare these in which one's more powerful. I would say they're probably about equally powerful given the systems that they're in. So then we have this. We have a +2 morale bonus on saving throws against fear, and it says this bonus stacks with a halfling's +1 to all saving throws. So he gets a +1 to everything, but a +3 total against fear. Very hard to scare. This was translated in the 5th edition as the Brave, getting advantage on saving throws against fear. That's how this translates. We then have this, +1 racial bonus on attack rolls with a thrown weapon or sling. Now this is very similar to the dwarven or elven weapon training. This is a cultural thing of halflings. If you throw a weapon, use a sling, you get a +1 to your attack. This +1 to attack would also stack with the +1 from being small, so with a thrown weapon, a halfling gets an additional +2 to their attack. So halflings, they can start off with a pretty good attack modifier in 3rd edition. This doesn't translate into 5th. So I know the elven weapon training and the dwarven weapon training from 3rd did translate into 5th, but the halfling weapon training, or this is not exactly weapon training, but it's a similar thing. They didn't translate it into 5th. And because of the mechanics of 5th edition, I'm not sure if it would translate. This is one that really, because of the mechanics difference between the two editions, the one can't really be in the other. But then we have this +2 bonus on listen checks. You'll note, elves got a +2 to listen, search, and spot. Halflings only get it to listen. They got good ears, but their eyes are not quite as keen as an elf's. Languages, we have, of course, common and our racial language of halfling. And our bonus languages, we have dwarf, elf, gnome, goblin, and orc. Halflings only have a list of 5 possible bonus languages. So technically, if you had a 20 intelligence, you would be able to speak every language that a halfling can know at first level. Now, I did forget to mention, I believe, that in 5th edition, they speak common and halfling. They still have their common and their racial language, so it's the same thing here as it is here. Sub-races, of course, do not exist in 3rd edition, not standard. In the monster manual, just like with the elves, there are additional sub-races. Elves and gnomes and dwarves both talk about sub-races in the monster manual, but they're not standard player races. And in 3rd edition, your 2 sub-races from the monster manual are the tall fellow and the deep halfling. And the deep halfling basically turns a halfling into a dwarf, and the tall one is a little bit stronger and hardier than the standard halfling, which is the Lightfoot in 3rd edition. But that's not standard. That's from the monster manual, so we don't need to get into the details on that. Standard, no sub-races. So what the sub-races have over here do not translate from 3rd edition. They're completely added in for 5th. There's the final note here. Favorite class for a halfling is the rogue. They are the quick, sneaky race. Comparing both of these, we got basically the same things. This bonus to climb, jump, and move silently could be considered a equivalent to the Lightfoot Halfling nimbleness, or at least as close as you can get to a translation of the two. So, the Halfling in both of them are your short, stealthy, sneaky kind of guys. And they're also more resilient in that they have the lucky or the bonus to all saving throws. They have their bravery in both of them. They really do translate 3rd edition into 5th fairly effectively. Of course, there's some things that don't translate over, but most of what is in 3rd edition is in 5th. And there's very little in 5th that is not also in 3rd. We'll leave it here. This is the last of my racial comparisons. As of right now, this will end